welcome to Flavor Text, a podcast where we explore the intersection between lore, story, and gameplay for Arkham Horror the card game. I'm CrabbyTerror8, and I'm joined, as usual, by my Yuletide colleague, Kevling. How are you, Kevling?
I'm fine, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm good. Just getting ready for Christmas.
Yes, I guess Yuletide will be it. It's a week before Christmas, isn't it, as we record this, and it'll probably be after Christmas by the time it goes out, and it won't mean anything anymore. But yes, I'm fine, thank you. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Yeah, just been really busy leading up to Christmas. People keep asking me for the video version of the background to the Forgotten Age, and I just haven't gotten around to it.
How funny is that, in the fact that you were asking me, shall I do a video or shall I do an audio? And I said, well, we always release the audio anyway.
Yeah.
And we can do the video later. Is anyone really interested? And so you've just been swamped, haven't you?
Well,
Where's the video?
Yeah, I haven't been swamped. A good friend of mine, Jason, friend of the podcast, friend of the channel, has been asking for the video version. And I feel bad that I haven't gotten it done. So I do want to do it. So yes, sorry, Jason. I will. I'll get it done in the next week or so. Yes. But anyway, this week, normal job is done, so I can get back to, getting ready for Christmas and doing Arkham stuff. That's on my agenda. So what have you been up to, Arkham-wise or other games-wise?
Well, Arkham-wise, I'm still on tenterhooks waiting for Scarlet Keys to land in the UK.
Oh, right.
I think our copy might have hit our local store Wednesday, Thursday this week. Right. It was supposed to have arrived on Wednesday, and I was there. I'm going to have my Ark. No, it's not here. Should have arrived today. Brilliant. It didn't arrive today. So I've not had a chance to pop back and pick it up, so I'm hoping it's there now.
Yeah.
So I've not done any Arkham at all since we last recorded. But PlayStation-wise, I have played and finished God of War Ragnarok.
Ooh, wow, you really crushed that.
Absolutely amazing. I think I put 51 hours into it so far.
Oh, okay.
And the amount of game in there is incredible. And every side story, it almost feels essential. And there's loads of side stories and bits open up after the game's finished as well, which is good, just to keep you going back and have something. There's a whole new region you unlock, and that grows as you explore. It's really, really good. And I just want someone to talk to the story, talk about with the story. There is a moment. If anyone's played it, they'll know, and I'm going to be very, very careful what I say, but there is a moment right near the end of the game where something happened on screen and my jaw hit the floor. I did not see that coming. Wow. That was a complete surprise, and I can't talk to anyone about it. I say I can't talk to anyone about it. My youngest hit that point yesterday, and I was actually finally able to talk to them about it. But, absolutely amazing game. Loved it.
Oh, so, well, that's, I really do want to play it, because apart from Elden Ring, they kind of really tussled it out for Game of the Year, really, didn't they?
They sort of had to alternate the awards, didn't they, so that they both got a similar number.
Yes. Them and Rabbi Bill Clinton were the talk of the Game Awards. I didn't see that one coming.
No, definitely not.
Oh yeah, I really want to play it. And so when it opens up, is it like the last one where it's just a lot of grinding, or is it opens up in a sort of a good way? Or
in fairness, it is a slow start.
Yep.
And my wife, my like I say, my youngest has been playing it. My wife watched me play it, and she's like, "Well, nothing's happening. When's it going to get interesting?" And he literally, it's almost like getting you back into the swing of things. And and again, spoilers for the first one. The first one ends, doesn't it? Have you played the first one?
I have. Yep.
Yeah, and it ends with that dream sequence, doesn't it? That Thor turns up at your front door.
Yeah. Yep.
And that literally does happen within like the first hour of the game, but it doesn't quite go the way you would expect that encounter to go. I'll just say that.
Okay.
It's really, really good.
Interesting.
Yes.
Fantastic. Oh well,
and they also do an up on you, and you probably will make you cry within the first 10 minutes as well.
Okay.
So
Wow.
yes. Some good stuff in there,
Incredible.
but yes, story-wise, it's a bit of a slow trek at first,
Sure.
but then when the story really does start hitting, it just ramps up and ramps up right to the end. Wow. Absolutely brilliant.
Yes, well,
Kevling recommended. There you go.
Yeah, well, that's definitely one I want to play, and I definitely want to play Horizon, not Zero Dawn, the follow-up as well. Those two are
Forbidden West.
Yes. Yep.
I've got that one still in shrink. We had a stupid offer in one of our local stores in December.
Yeah.
They reduced the price of a DualShock down to £35.
Oh, that's good.
And then they reduced Horizon to £35.
Oh.
But then they said if you buy a PS5 game and a DualShock, you get £30 off.
Wow.
So I think I got a DualShock and the new Horizon game for like £45.
That's a great deal. Wow.
So, yeah. So even if I didn't want the game, that's a cheap DualShock.
Yeah, that's right.
Or the other way around. Yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
So, yeah, that'll be my next one, I think.
Yes.
I enjoyed Horizon, but I didn't love Horizon, if that makes sense. It's one of those games I felt like I was supposed to enjoy rather than I actually did.
Yep.
I found the combat quite frustrating, and I ended up whacking it right down to the easiest level, because I was more interested in the story.
Yes, great story.
I'll see how the second one goes.
Yep. Awesome.
And what about you? What have you been up to?
Still playing Dark Matter, so still getting through that.
Is it still good?
It's it is. It is. Getting to the end of that, we were supposed to finish it this year because in my gaming group at the sort of local game store, we're doing Scarlet Keys next year. So, but we haven't finished Dark Matter, so I think we've got 2 more scenarios to do, something like that. So getting there.
Excellent.
Yeah. So done that. I have my Scarlet Keys, so that came through. So I don't understand why, I can't see why Australia would get them before the UK. Makes no sense in any way. And what else? Apart from that, I've been trying to get through some of my old games that have been sitting there staring at me. So I video games. So I unfurled the Evil Within Part 1, which is about 10 years old now. Survival horror, sort of Silent Hill, Resident Evil.
Oh right, yeah.
It sort of harkens back to those, and it's quite good. But the save system is incredibly frustrating.
Is it one of these where you have to get to a save point to be able to save? Or
well, it automatically.
What's frustrating about it?
It kind of it automatically saves at certain points, but there doesn't seem to be any.
You've got no visibility or control over when that happens,
and so there are times when it does it, and you're like, "Oh, why has it done it?" And then other times it doesn't. You die, and you end up doing the same bit over and over. And there's this one bit where there's these sort of traps, and you have to sort of run. It's a classic survival horror. You're going to run through sort of this series of traps, and there's something chasing you. And I did it about 20 times. But the problem was, from the save point to that point, took about 30 seconds. Back in the room. Wait for the door to open. Wait for the cuts. So, anyway, I'm nearly at the end of it. So yes. So I've been playing that. So apparently the second one's better than the first one. So I'll play that one next. We'll see.
Admittedly, there were a couple of annoying bits in God of War that were a little bit like that, where you were having like a boss fight, and then when you'd respawn, it would get you back to where you were having to crawl slowly through a tunnel, which is obviously to hide a PS4 loading screen.
Yeah, right.
To get. Which you don't need on a PS5 to get out to then for the boss battle divide, and then you die again. You have to crawl through the tunnel and have the same conversation with Mimir on your belt or whatever. But yes. They were. It's not much of a low point if that's the worst thing about the whole game. Yeah.
And I've learned how to play Unfathomable. So yes, so I've convinced the rest of the family we're going to have a good
game,
go.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So looking forward to playing that over the holidays. Hopefully, I get to be the traitor.
Stuff.
So, yeah, that's what I've been up to. So yeah, and of course we did play the opening scenario of Forgotten Age a couple of weeks ago as well, didn't we?
You could say we played it, yes. We did get smacked around a little bit, didn't we?
Well, it wouldn't be the Forgotten Age if we didn't get smacked around a bit. That's all part of the Forgotten Age, isn't it? To get monstered.
It is.
I was just about to say, so what did we do last time, Kevling? And I realised there was no last time because we're here in a brand new campaign.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the Forgotten Age.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as I've mentioned on this podcast before, the Forgotten Age was my first proper Arkham campaign that I was able to play along as it released.
Yep. I
got into the game towards the end of Carcosa, so it was like I was playing catch up on Dunwich and Carcosa. But yes, it's. I mean, it's not something you get with the new style campaign packaging, but the fact that one campaign, one scenario per month as the story slowly unfolds, and it was absolutely amazing, and I absolutely loved it. And I didn't know any better in terms of how hard or easy it was.
Yes. I do have very powerful memories of playing the Untamed Wilds because it was, and we'll talk about that more, but it was very discouraging to fail so badly. The first scenario, it really doesn't matter if you do, but it was quite disheartening. I remember when playing it for the first time and getting monstered.
I remember playing it with we had a group that used to meet and play Arkham, and we worked all the way through from Night of the Zealot. We went through Dunwich, we went through Carcosa. We only got halfway through Forgotten Age, and everyone just found it so crushingly crushingly difficult that they gave up. And since then, one of them has even sold his Arkham collection. So I'm hoping I'm not to blame for that, making them play Forgotten Age.
It's the Dark Souls of campaigns, to borrow a phrase.
Oh, dear. No, it is a great campaign. I really love it.
Yes,
but we'll talk about that in more detail as we work through it.
Absolutely. So where should we start, Kevling?
Should we start with the prologue?
Yeah, let's start with the prologue because what's interesting is that this is a little bit like The Gathering. The prologue starts with sort of these diary entries, right? It's sort of stuff that's happened in the past.
Okay, shall I pick the prologue up then?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Tuesday, June the 2nd, 1925. There will be no rest for us this summer, it seems. Today I met with Harlan Ernstone, a historical theorist at Miskatonic University and an old friend of mine. He said he'd had a job offer for me, but frankly, I didn't know what to expect. Harlan introduced me to an associate of his, Alejandro Vela, a distinguished historian from across the southern border. Mr. Vela is a graduate of a prestigious university in Mexico City and has spent many years researching the Aztec Empire. He claims that he has found evidence regarding the existence of an unheard-of Aztec city-state called Etztli. His strange and unprecedented findings were not accepted by the university, and he's become a pariah among his peers. Alejandro came to Arkham to seek funding for an expedition into the rainforests of southern Mexico, where he believes that the ruins of the Etzli Altepetl lie undiscovered. His description of this city-state's origins defies modern understanding of Mesoamerican history. Despite this, or knowing my old friend because of this, Harlan is enthralled by Alejandro's discoveries. Miskatonic University has agreed to fund the expedition, albeit meagerly, and Harlan wants me to go along. The way I see it, there's a good chance we're looking for something that doesn't even exist, but if there's even a slight chance these Etzli people existed, the historical significance would be profound. We debated the issue for some time, but in the end we accepted Alejandro's offer. Preparations are underway and we should be setting off by the end of the month. With any luck, we'll have this journal filled with all manner of interesting discoveries. If not, perhaps it'll be a nice wedge to place between Harlan's lopsided desk.
Fantastic. Actually, I just looked up what Mesoamerican was because I'm like, I've read that a few times, but I actually don't know what it means. So it's just on Wikipedia, but it's a historical region and cultural area in southern North America and most of Central America. So it goes from Mexico through Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and northern Costa Rica. So there you go. It's a sort of that's the sort of area. Yeah, so it's a great start, and I didn't think about it at first, but it's usually in the last couple of campaigns things have been in the present. You know what I mean? But this, like the first campaign, is sort of written about the past. So it already tells us that somewhere along in this campaign we're going to be back at the present, but at the moment everything we're doing has happened in the past because these are diary entries that
It's not hugely in the past, though. Unless, or are you thinking about this that the whole of the Forgotten Age is a series of diary entries? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but it's not because we get to a point where we're back in the present. But at the beginning, where these diary entries have been written about the past. So we'll go from diary entries to no longer diary entries at some point. Yes, that will happen. So...
okay, because I was looking at the times that this was set in, and this, when you look at it, Night of the Zealot, I think you can see is set in September 1925.
Mm-hmm.
Dunwich, there's no dates in the Dunwich campaign book, but the Dunwich Horror itself was set in 1928.
Yep.
And Dunwich Legacy was some months later. And there's no dates on Carcosa, but this is starting in June 1925. So far, this is the earliest set Arkham.
Yes. Yep.
At least in terms of the card game. I can't speak for any of the other games. So it's not much of a fact, but that's the nearest I've got to an interesting fact to start this campaign off.
Yes.
We are earliest in time. This is happening before Night of the Zealot.
Yeah, interesting, huh? Yes. So...
I mean, it ends... after Night of the Zealot.
Yes.
It ends in December and even in 1934, depending on certain little spin-off parts of the story. But at this point, this is the earliest bit of Arkham we've had.
Interesting, yeah. But quite a nice, benign, relatively benign start. Like, sometimes there could be quite, like the Gathering one sounds quite foreboding, and the ghouls' hunger and all this. This one seems quite benign, really. We're just going on a jolly little adventure into the jungle and probably nothing. We'll probably not find anything, and isn't it all fun?
Just some bog standard academic research. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, so it's great that it sets it up like that. That it's there's a distinct lack of threat. You know what I mean? Whereas in the previous ones, even Carcosa to a degree, but less, maybe a bit less so. But there's, Dunwich and the Gathering. You start with a distinct amount of threat. Even in Carcosa, they talk about things happening with the play and people dying. But with this one, the only thing that gives you any hint is that it's sort of something unusual or undiscovered. But it's pretty benign sort of start, really. Yeah. What could go wrong?
The way it's worded there, you're not expecting to find anything anyway.
No.
You're half expecting to come back with an empty book to put under his wonky table leg.
Exactly, yeah. It's sort of all very, hey-ho.
One interesting thing there at the end of the prologue, we didn't read it out, but it's part of the setup. It says, if Ursula Downs, Leo Anderson or Monterey Jack was chosen as an investigator for this campaign, choose one of them to be the expedition leader. I think I mentioned it before. Monterey Jack, he at this point, who's Monterey Jack? Where do I find Monterey Jack? I haven't got Monterey Jack in my set. And he didn't turn up until Edge of the Earth, so that's like, 5 years later, maybe?
Yes, exactly.
And I thought that was a nice touch, just having somebody referenced there that didn't physically exist in the game at that point.
No, and not for a long time since...
Is it worth just briefly touching on the new mechanics
that
come in then at this point?
Yes. Yep.
So if we just flick back to the start of the book, there are some new rules. We've got the the rule of seal. So some cards have the seal keyword.
Yep.
So when that happens, it would say seal, for example, the Elder Sign token. So what that means is you have to search the Chaos Bag for that token, and you seal it onto that card, so it's no longer available as an option in the Chaos Bag until that card leaves play, or some other term releases it.
Which has been used, like it's used by player cards now. I mean, it's a really core sub-mechanic, I suppose you might call it. I mean, it's really common, particularly Mystics, right? They do a lot of sealing of...
They do.
Some weaknesses, seal things away, and so there's the seal. Yeah. There's the just looking now. One of the others is the alert. So alert. This was the first time that alert came up. So this is essentially the evasion version of retaliate. Essentially, so if you're looking to evade an enemy, if they have alert and you fail, then they attack you. Basically, Yep.
We talked briefly about the supplies, that they don't do anything on their own, but they will get referenced through the story.
Yep.
The next one is Vengeance. So this works similar to Victory. So instead of having Victory X on a card, it would say Vengeance X. So essentially, you treat it like a victory card. It goes into the victory display, but Vengeance will get tottered up by some game mechanic to be revealed later.
Yes. There's a new kind of weakness, which is sort of campaign mode only sort of weaknesses. So there's a few of those.
Oh yeah, they were really interesting, weren't they? Those campaign style weaknesses. That it's basically like a weakness that evolves throughout the course of the campaign. So once it turns up, it would then get replaced by the next version of it, and it's almost like the weaknesses themselves are telling a story.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, they're very
They're quite brutal. But they're really clever. Yes,
exactly. And then there's, of course, the big one, which is the exploration mechanic.
Yeah, and this is one of the sort of fundamentals of this campaign, isn't it? It crops up time and time again as we're exploring the jungle.
Yep.
And it's, again, I think we touched on it on some of the previous scenarios where they've tried to do that that way of exploring and not knowing what's coming next, but this is where it was sort of crystallized down into a proper set of rules that sort of manage how these locations will come out. And it got tweaked and substantially improved in the return version, didn't it? But for now, we're just going to talk about the basic campaign version. So essentially, where there's an explore deck, you will build a deck of locations and sometimes treacheries as well. And so when you're told to explore, you'll say explore for a connecting location, for example. You will keep revealing cards from that deck until you either find a connecting a location that matches what you're looking for, or a treachery. If you pull out multiple locations that don't match, they will get mixed back into the deck and shuffle back up again afterwards. But if it's a treachery, then you resolve it just like any other treachery, but then it goes into the discard pile and it's out of the explore deck then. So you sort of thinned out the non-locations in the deck and improving your chances. You've had to take some sort of negative effect, but then you've improved your chances of successfully exploring later. I think that sort of sums it up, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's really great. It really kind of brings to life that idea of exploring into the unknown. What's going to happen?
Definitely.
And it gives you an extra. I mean, it really kind of gives you. Not only does it give you an extra thing to do, but also it's an extra thing you have to do. So whereas in previous campaigns, generally, locations just open up before you as you sort of move through a space. This is really different now. You actually have to physically take effort yes, you do move automatically to the location once you've explored it, right? But it still takes physical effort to find something rather than just, I'm just moving to this location and then it gets uncovered and that kind of thing, or I've got to spend a couple of clues and then I can go through that location. It really kind of tries to give it that idea of really kind of going through the wilds, trying to find the way through. I think it does a really good job of sort of bringing that to life in the card game in a really nice way. I really like it. Yeah. And I like the way the thing I really like about what it does is it gets you involved immediately, having to sort of choose your provisions. Because it could have just said, you get your supplies and you go. But it's great the way it sets you up by choosing these provisions, particularly the first time. I mean, once you kind of know what they do, but that first time you're like, what should we take? And because you can't take everything, obviously. It's great the way it kind of gets you involved even before the scenario starts. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's tied in with the narrative as well, because the logic is you're being funded by the university, but not very much. No. So you're not going to be able to take much with you, and it's sort of playing into that part of the story there, which I quite like.
Yes, and it's like it really is a bit of a lottery when you've not played before. It's like, well, what the hell am I going to take? You know.
Yeah.
And what things I should say, spoilers to anyone listening. If you haven't played The Forgotten Age, I think you better play it first.
We've not given anything away yet, but yes, from this point on, all holds are off. Yeah.
But once you know, you've got to take provisions and medicine, which you would anyway. But they're pretty vital. And I
did start making some notes against each of the provisions as to when they were used and what the benefits or what the impact was.
Yes.
I've not finished it yet. I've only gone through the interludes, because some of them have got in-scenario benefits, haven't they?
Yes. Yeah.
But like you say, provisions and medicine, they trigger in 3 of the first 4 interludes. So 1, 3, and 4, they trigger in each of those. And provisions loses you 3 resources for the next scenario, and medicine will give you a physical trauma. It will give you a physical trauma if you're poisoned. Let me get that. I think that's the right way around, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't have medicine, yes.
And not taking the map, I would say that's essential. I think most people would probably think it's pretty essential for the first scenario.
Definitely, there's that whole exploration mechanic is much easier once you have the map.
Completely, because you really just then, otherwise you're just completely at the mercy of the random draws from the exploration deck. So,
Yeah, Blanket is also fairly important in the early part of the game as well, because that triggers an interlude 1 and 4, giving you a mental or a physical trauma, your choice. Yeah. But that is one thing that this campaign is infamous for, isn't it? And that is the level of trauma it deals out.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
It's almost like it's teaching you that your physical and mental health or stamina or whatever. I've had a mental block and I've forgotten what the official term is. Your health and your sanity, that's it, isn't it?
Yep.
Your health and your sanity are more mere resources for you to use as part of the game, and they will get used up.
Yes, exactly. Yes, so it gets you involved, gets you choosing your resources. All sounds good, and hey-ho, we're off to the Untamed Wilds.
I also like as well how the amount of resource you can take varies depending on how many players are in the game, just to make sure you can't overload yourselves by having more players. You don't get an unfair advantage or benefit, or an unfair disadvantage if you're playing on your own.
Yes.
So like 1 investigator can take 10 points worth, 2 investigators 7 each, 3 investigators 5 each, 4 investigators 4 each.
So yes, so that sort of sets up, and then it jumps a month, essentially a month later, right? Nearly a month later. Sort of jump in time to the next diary entry, which is sort of 20 odd days later, which is the beginning of the first scenario. And this is quite different to the previous diary entry. It's been a hell of a day. We've just set up camp along the northern border of the rainforest where Alejandro believes the Etzli once dwelled. The jungle here is dense and untamed. The sky hides above the tree cover, but I can tell from the crisp breeze that storm clouds are brewing overhead. The dangers of our expedition have been explained to us many times. We are hundreds of miles away from any sign of civilization. Nobody in modern times has yet to pierce the heart of these wilds. Until now, nobody has had reason to try. After all, it wouldn't make sense to find Aztec ruins in this region of Mexico, and yet here we are, looking for ruins that may not exist in a place where by all accounts they should not. Already one of our surveyors has fallen ill, and another has been bitten by a viper. I'm starting to think the rainforest doesn't want us here. If this luck persists, ours will be the shortest expedition in Miskatonic University history. Tonight we rest, tomorrow we venture into uncharted wilds. So
I'm still disappointed that they didn't say Untamed Wilds there. It's the name of the scenario.
Yeah. But quite a contrast to the first one. So clearly it's a lot harder than they'd ever imagined. So it's setting up that idea of, these American city dweller academics sort of just, charging headlong into the wilderness, really don't know what they're doing, unprepared. And they've just found it a lot more difficult than they ever imagined. And it's going to get worse. And it also foreshadows the fact that, yes, there's going to be enemies, but the jungle itself is going to be an enemy. Like, your physical environment is going to be particularly challenging.
Excellent. So we've done the prologue and the introduction.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered all of the new mechanics that arrive as part of the Forgotten Age. So I guess we dive into the cards themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll start with just the scenario card with the chaos symbols on. So it's our first reference to vengeance here. Your skull on easy standard is -X, where X is the number of vengeance points in the victory display. So that already gives you a clue there that as your vengeance points grow, the skull is going to get worse and worse throughout the scenario. And obviously before you play, you don't know where vengeance points are going to come from, but essentially they're all on similar types of enemies, aren't they? So you're building up this particular enemy's vengeance against you by defeating his people, so to speak.
Yep.
Your cultist is -X, which is the number of locations in play. So again, that's going to get worse as you start to explore.
Yep.
Up to a cap of 5. -X for the tablet, where X is the number of cards in the exploration deck. So that's almost the opposite. So as you explore, the cultist will get worse, but the tablet will get better.
Yes. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. And your Elder Thing is -2, but if you're poisoned, this test will automatically fail instead. So poisoned, again, is another new thing in this campaign, isn't it? It's a set of weakness cards that will get doled out to you at certain points during the campaign.
Yeah. So poison doesn't work like you might imagine, that you lose a, physical strength every turn or something like that. It kind of consigns as sort of, things like auto fails and those sorts of things.
It's an ongoing effect, really, isn't it? That then other cards or things will refer to. If you are poisoned, then X. Otherwise, Y.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Looking at the hard expert side of the card, it's very similar. Where the skull is your vengeance points +1. The cultist and the tablet are the same, but with the cap removed from the cultist, and the tablet having a minimum of 3. So again, just making it worse all around. And your Elder Thing is -3. Again, if you're poisoned, it automatically fails. But again, then if you're not poisoned and you fail, you then get poisoned. So just to make it doubly worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Okay. So shall we dive into the scenario itself now then?
Yeah. So the agenda for this, Agenda 1A, has a rather comforting picture of a bloody hand and a knife against a wall, and says, "Expedition into the wild. Your expedition has ventured far into the rainforest of southern Mexico in search of a forgotten Aztec city-state. What will you find when you head deeper into the untamed jungle?" So and there's this action, which is explore, which is draw the top card of the exploration deck. If it is a connecting location, put it into play and move to it. So it takes an action, but if it's one that's connected, then you automatically move to that other location. So that's the agenda. And you've got 6 doom there, so you've got some time to do some exploration at the beginning.
And then on the Act side, Act 1A is exploring the rainforest. Today, you depart from your camp in order to find the ruins Alejandro seeks. That is, if they even exist. The objective is, when the round ends, investigators at a non-campsite location may spend the requisite number of clues, which is 3 per investigator, as a group to advance. So that's the scene set, really, isn't it? We start off at our campsite, we need to go exploring, and we need to find 3 clues each to be able to progress the story. Simple as that.
Exactly. Most of the time, maybe the very first time you play, you might not get there before the agenda, but once you know this scenario, usually you can get to Act 2A usually before the first agenda flips over, usually, barring, because a lot of the nasty cards aren't yet in the encounter deck, and as long as you know what you're doing, you should be able to get those reasonably okay, particularly if you have the map, which I think anyone who knows this scenario will. So everybody starts at the expedition camp. Yeah, basically that's it. There's nothing else laid out. That's the other thing. You basically start with just one location. You're literally just facing this jungle. You don't know where you're going. And then it's a question of sort of searching from there and try and get those clues, obviously, as quickly as possible, right? And there are 6 other jungle locations available in the first encounter deck. Is that right?
I think it might be. Is it 3? There's a couple of ancient locations, aren't there?
Oh, the ancient locations come later, I think. Don't they? Or am I?
Yeah.
So there's 9 locations in total. Yep.
Yeah, your campsite is a jungle location. So sorry, I was thinking when you said jungle locations, I thought you were talking about the explore deck. So yes, there's 6 jungle locations, one of which is your campsite.
5. So then the exploration deck has got 5 of the jungle locations, and then it's got 5 of those, Lost in the Wilds and Snakebite, etc. So you've got this sort of deck of 10, and you start at the expedition camp, and then it's a case of trying to find your way and get these clues to and you don't know. It doesn't say what happens when you get the clues. It's just sort of, you're just literally searching into the jungle to try and find this sort of Aztec ruins. Yep.
Yeah, and then the expedition camp itself introduces a mechanic that lets you manipulate the explore deck if you've got the map.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
So if I just quickly whiz through the flavour text, the camp is above with both excitement and dread. Some members of the expedition are setting up additional canvas tents for supplies, while others are huddled around an incomplete map of the northern edge of the rainforest. So again, that's all backing up the point where actually you don't really know where you're going. No. You've got a map, but it's not complete. No. And if you do have the map, when you flip the expedition camp to look at the other side, you've got 2 actions there. Resign, the wilds are too dangerous. Or as an action, you can check your supplies, and if you've got the map, you can look at the top 3 cards of the exploration deck, place 1 on the bottom and the other 2 on the top in any order. So if you've got the map and you're at camp, you can sort of manipulate the explore deck to give you the locations you're looking for and avoid the treacheries, potentially.
Yeah.
Unless the top 3 cards you look at are all treacheries, and then you're stuff.
So one strategy with multiplayer is you just leave somebody at camp, constantly manipulating the map.
Yes.
And everybody else goes and does their thing.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So,
and that's what we did, isn't it?
Yes.
Effectively,
Yes.
when we played it.
Yeah.
And at first, as we said, there's 5 other jungle locations in that explore deck. And for example, while you are at the campsite, 3 of those locations are connected to the campsite.
Yep.
So you've got 3 out of 5 of the locations are connected. So it's just whether or not you're drawing the treacheries. Other than that, you've got good odds of finding a connecting location.
Yeah, exactly.
So by using the map, get the treacheries out of the way, get the locations you want to the top of the deck.
Yes.
And off you go.
Yes. And there's a bit of flavour text here as well, isn't there? Oh, it's full of flavour text.
Oh, yes. Yes, I missed that. It's the name of the podcast as well. The expedition has staked its claim on the jungle, and the jungle doesn't seem all too happy about it.
It's interesting how it's kind of characterising the jungle as almost like a monster, like a enemy.
Yeah. It's us versus the jungle.
Yes, exactly. Now, these locations are not two-sided, like the expedition camp, because they're part of the exploration deck, so they just come out as they are. So the River Canyon, which is as you would expect, it's a river with waterfalls and things. It's a 4-shroud, 1 clue per investigator location, and it has an action: heal 1 damage from an investigator at River Canyon. Check your supplies. If you have a canteen, heal 2 additional damage. Limit once per game. So you can heal here. And if you've got the canteen, which is one of the supplies, you can heal extra. Although, at this stage of the game, you don't know if you would use it so much. Don't know. But anyway, the river is deeper than it appears. Ripples along its surface obscure the creatures that lie within. Water cascades into the river from above, causing a strong, steady current. So that's the River Canyon off the expedition camp.
Okay, so the next one I have... Sorry, you've done River Canyon. Mm-hmm. Next one I have is Rope Bridge. Yes. 2 shroud, 1 clue per investigator, and forced. When you attempt to explore while at Rope Bridge, test evasion of 2. If you fail, cancel the exploration, take 2 damage, lose all remaining actions, end your turn, and place your local investigator in the River Canyon.
Brilliant.
And if it's not in play, put the River Canyon into play and then shuffle the deck. So talk about a whole bunch of negative consequences. So yeah, you fail the exploration, so the exploration doesn't happen. You get 2 damage. You end your turn because you've lost all your remaining actions, and you've fallen off the rope bridge into the River Canyon.
Yes, yes, exactly.
I love that.
Brilliant.
It's awful, but I love it in terms
exactly.
of thematically fitting what's actually going on in the campaign. You are. Again, it's similar to the theatre in Carcosa, where they're actually using almost like 3D in the map there. Yeah. The rope bridge will be above the canyon.
Exactly.
And you fall down into it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just said, you won't need the heal at the River Canyon. Well, I guess if you'd fallen off the rope bridge, you probably would want the heal in the River Canyon. So
this is how this game started off. I'm grabbing that canteen now. Yeah.
And presumably these are the Untamed Wilds, but not so untamed that someone's not built a rope bridge. So there you go.
Very true.
Yeah. The next one is the Path of Thorns. So that's the 3rd one that's sort of off the expedition camp. And it's a 3-shroud location with 1 clue per investigator. Looks like there's clearly some kind of Aztec-y like structures there. So there's something around here, and these trees have got these horrible thorns on them. So forced, after you fail a skill test while investigating Path of Thorns, take a damage. So really, again, the locations themselves are damaging you if you're not careful. The very environment itself is challenging. Forced, after you explore while at the Path of Thorns, if the exploration is not successful, take a damage as well. So that's not good. It's like you've gone tearing through and literally got yourself torn up trying to find the locations and things. So yeah, there we go.
So Serpent's Haven, let me just get this right, is connected to the Path of Thorns that you just Was it the Path of Thorns
Yep,
you just read out?
that's right. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so Serpent's Haven is connected to the Path of Thorns. 2 shroud, 2 clues per investigator. Each serpent enemy at Serpent's Haven gets +1 fight.
Yep.
And then as a forced effect, after you investigate or explore while at Serpent's Haven, if you are poisoned, take a damage. So that's another example there of poisoned having a negative effect on the game.
A lot of snakes.
But it does have a victory point, that location.
Yes.
Snakes, I hate snakes.
A lot of snakes.
This really adds to the sort of Indiana Jones of this campaign as well, doesn't it?
And the final location that you can access is called the Circuitous Trail, which just looks like a sort of a jungle, sort of impenetrable jungle. It's only a 1 shroud, 1 clue per investigator. We think, oh, awesome! But it's got a victory point. As an additional cost for you to investigate or explore while at the Circuitous Trail, check your supplies. If no investigator at your location has a compass, you must spend 3 resources. And it says, haven't you been here before? So this is where you hope you've got Preston with you in the, party.
Yeah, or some other rich...
yes, Jenny or somebody. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So far we've had the canteen reference, we've had the map referenced,
yes.
and now we've had the compass referenced.
Yes.
And I think 2 of those are ones we didn't say you needed on this first scenario. So it shows what we know, doesn't it?
Exactly. But, whatever you take, you can't take
something
everything.
you should... Yes, exactly, yeah. So even as a solo player, you've got 10 points of stuff to take.
Yes.
But yeah, you won't have everything you need, because
No.
if you take everything you need during the scenario,
Yes.
there'll be stuff you needed in between scenarios
Yes.
that you didn't have. Yeah.
And I think it's worthwhile mentioning that you're doing the exploration, you're getting these locations, you're trying to get the clues, but at the same time, even before the encounter deck is filled further, the encounter deck is full of things that are really kind of holding you back in all kinds of difficult ways. The physical jungle itself, you've got overgrowth, for example, which is a little bit like a locked door kind of effect, which stops you from, instead of finding clues, stops you from exploring from locations. There's something called Voice of the Jungle, which is pretty nasty, that if you don't successfully explore, you take horror. And there's low on supplies, you can get lost. There's all these things that are going on. Snake bites while you're trying to, maybe not snake bites, I don't know if that's in yet. Oh, probably is actually. But all these things are kind of harassing you and stopping you from actually doing anything whilst you're trying to explore. So whilst it sounds relatively straightforward, actually it's not, particularly the first time you do it, because you're just getting stymied all the time by various things to get these 6 clues in the sort of, 6 times before 6 doom hits. So I think from a story perspective, I don't know what you think, but they do a great job of bringing this idea of this sort of exploration, which is really quite difficult and challenging and hazardous to life. They really bring it to life in the cards, I think, in a really great way. So, yes.
Fantastic stuff.
Yes.
So, shall we, now that we've explored the jungle part of the map, shall we progress the act and the agenda? Yeah,
because I think the thing is, usually what would happen is you would get through the first act probably just before the agenda, and that's a critical point when that sort of act flips. So
okay, so let's flip the act then. So the reverse of Act 1, so Act 1B, the natives. As you explore the dense jungle, you are suddenly confronted by several natives. At first glance, they appear to be warriors of an Aztec city-state, perhaps even the one you seek. But how could they have survived undiscovered for this long? Even with Alejandro's notes, you are barely able to translate what the warriors say, only that they call you intruder and implore you to leave the jungle at once. You try to explain that you are searching for the Etzli, which causes them to murmur and debate amongst themselves. Finally, one of them speaks to you in rudimentary Spanish. Ichitaka will know what to do with you, intruder. He blows on a decorated clay ocarina, producing a shrill note that echoes throughout the jungle. The warriors depart as suddenly as they have arrived. Put the set-aside Ichitaka enemy into play at the lead investigator's location and shuffle the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck.
I didn't know this before, but normally the act deck wouldn't shuffle the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck, but it does in this case, doesn't it? That's interesting, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's usually an agenda thing, isn't it?
Yes.
And then before we look at Ichitaka, let's just read the Act 2A, Huntress of the Etzli.
Yep.
I don't trust them, Alejandro says as soon as the natives are out of earshot. They mean to kill us, not aid us. If you think this Ichitaka is going to help us find the ruins, be my guest, but I refuse to follow where she leads. You can feel the discomfort and confusion in Alejandro's voice. You can attempt to speak with Ichitaka, or you can take Alejandro's advice and fight your way to the ruins you seek. So we've got a double objective here. Firstly, we either defeat Ichitaka to advance, or if there are 1 clues per investigator on Ichitaka, we place her in the victory display and advance.
Yes, here's a bit of a dilemma, isn't it? So immediately it's setting up a kind of a tension between Alejandro on the one hand and sort of Ichitaka on the other, in kind of having to make a decision about whose advice to follow.
Yeah, the one thing I don't like about the way that plays out, or maybe it's deliberate, is Alejandro is having that conversation here right in front of Ichitaka, because she has just been placed at the lead investigator's location, presumably which is where Alejandro is.
Yes.
And again, spoilers, she's going to have understood every word he said.
It's like he's really not backwards in coming forwards about the fact it's weird. You don't why doesn't he like her? Like, we don't know anything about her. But he's already sort of very kind of anti, so it is strange, isn't it? The way that he
the story will unfold. That explains a little behind that later, won't it?
Exactly.
But at this point, it just doesn't feel right. Yeah, and I meant almost in the gameplay terms, the fact that you have spawned Ichitaka at your location and then this conversation happens. It's almost as though that conversation should be happening.
Yes.
If she's somewhere else.
Exactly.
Exactly. Or maybe if it's a multiplayer game, yes, Ichitaka's at the lead investigator's location, but then how's Alejandro talking to you if she's not there?
Yeah.
It just feels a little bit clunky and not right to me. I
know what you mean. And frankly, pragmatically, what you do with Ichitaka is really going to depend on the strength of the party. So if the party is weakish on intellect things, then you're going to go the biffo. If
the biffo.
if you've got, because Parley Test 4 is not small, so you need a fairly good way to test for that. Fight is pretty high, and her evade is, so she's a tough customer because she's a 5/4/4. She's got alert and retaliate, and she hits for 2 physical. So she's not a pushover. So you're gonna basically just choose the thing, and the problem is fighting and evading is going to get her. You could get attacked anyway. So in a way, Parley's easier because you don't get a retaliate from a Parley, right? You can just do it again. So usually,
although it says if you fail the Parley,
she attacks.
And she's ready, she attacks you.
Oh, okay, there goes.
So yeah, every single way of progressing has a negative effect on you if you fail.
Exactly, it's not easy at all. So I don't think I've ever gone toe to toe and sort of beaten her up though. I think I've always gone the Parley path. I think from memory. Yeah,
like you say, a 5 is quite not a pushover by any means.
No, particularly not in the first scenario. I mean, so it's not an easy. In fact, I think from memory, the first time I played, we actually came a cropper with Ichitaka because we could, we ended up getting monstered by her because we kept failing the throws. I think from memory. So
and she's 4 health as well. So if you go in the fight option, you've got to fight her at least twice, depending on what your weapons are. Maybe 4 times if you're only doing basic attacks.
Yep. Yep.
At least if you're parlaying, it's just one per investigator. So if you're playing solo, you've just got to pass it once.
Yes.
And you're through.
Yes. So I can imagine for some, less experienced players, they could literally end the scenario here.
Yeah.
They could. It's a pretty quite a difficult kind of bottleneck to get through. I mean, once you know it, you kind of prepare for it. You know what you're doing.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Yes. So,
and generally, your investigators will be geared up, at least someone in the party will be geared up to investigate, seeing as that's the whole point of the game. You are investigators, so the chances are you will be able to deal with the investigate because you'll have come across 4 shroud locations before and been able to get through them.
Yeah, and if the party's all in the one location, they can help throw other, pips in to make sure it happens and all those sorts of things. So yeah. It's not an easy encounter, but it's not impossible either. So, yes,
beautiful piece of art on the attacker card as well, isn't it? With the headdress and everything. She's got a bow at the ready.
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic.
Really good. Yeah, so it's like you're facing down her with her bow drawn.
Yes.
Okay. So while you're doing that, probably the agenda will probably flip, right? Shall I?
It will, yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, sure.
So that goes to the Serpent's Attack. This is Agenda 1B. After hours of exploration and futile attempts to map out the wilds, you're convinced something is watching your progress, stalking your every move. The shapes of large serpentine creatures slither in the brush all around you. You try to back away, but the creatures have you completely surrounded, hissing at you from all sides. Suddenly, several shapes emerge from the brush. Human-sized creatures with bodies of serpents and arms wielding spears and jagged knives. The creatures are savage, attacking you fiercely. Somehow you manage to flee to safety, though the sensation that you're being watched remains. Although you survive the encounter, you are confronted with a stark reality. This place is home to creatures beyond your understanding. Then you shuffle the encounter discard pile into the set-aside the set-aside Ancients of Yig, which is the Broods of Yig and the Serpents of Yoth, into the encounter deck. Each investigator does a willpower test of 3. If you fail, performs the following in order. If you are poisoned, take a damage and a horror. If you are not poisoned, put a set-aside poisoned weakness into play in your threat area. So there you go. So now, this is the sort of the challenge, and the great thing about this scenario is basically you've got the jungle and all its sort of various, encounters, difficulties. You've got the Etzli and the Etzli Guardians with their arrows, and you've got the Serpent People. You've got 3 factions of things, if you like, all like gunning for you all at the same time. It's it's really hostile. The hostility level is really up there, and you're alone, cut off from everything, sort of, surviving in this wilderness. It really is very hostile, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah, everything's against you, which is, I guess, the theme, like you say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, well, should we take the Agenda 2A then, seeing as we flipped Agenda?
Yeah, sorry. Agenda 2A is what was once excitement has turned to dread. This place is far deadlier than you could have imagined. It's though the jungle itself wants you out. Yeah. And then we're back to exploring as well. So yeah, basically things are much more difficult than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And there are only 2 agendas in this game, so now you've only got 9 turns left.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, yeah, it seems it's pretty brutal in terms of time. I mean, it's up there with Midnight Masks, really. In terms of that, you're right. You've only got 9 turns now, and what you've got to get done in those 9 turns is a lot.
Yeah, at least in Midnight Masks, the map's already out for you, and you just go wandering around. You've got to actually build the map as you go on this one, taking actions to create the map, doing the explorations.
Yeah, exactly.
So, at this point, then, we are either fighting or having a nice chat with Ichitaka. So, presuming we have done one of those two things, we advance the act. So, Act 2B, Ichitaka's response. So, here it almost becomes a choose-your-own-adventure. So, depending on which of the two options you chose. So, if she has one clue per investigator on her, so you've taken the parley option. Interesting. You are not simply here to shed blood, Ichitaka says with a spark of wonder in her voice, and you are stunned to hear her speaking with perfect English. So hence she would have heard everything that Alejandro said about him not trusting her.
Alejandro!
What were you saying?
Use the Pidgin Latin in future.
So here we remember that Ichitaka is leading the way, and we add a cultist token to the Chaos Bag for the remainder of the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
We shuffle the 3 set-aside ruins locations into the exploration deck, and then we advance to Act 3A, Search for the Ruins.
Yep.
But if we defeated Ichitaka, it plays out differently. Fools, Ichitaka shouts to you with a pained voice. You do not understand the forces you are meddling with. If you truly wish to die, you will find the temple over the river to the south. Remember that you fought with Ichitaka. Choose an investigator to take control of Alejandro Vela, and add a tablet token to the Chaos Bag for the remainder of the campaign, and then shuffle the 3 set-aside ruins locations into the exploration deck again, but this time you advance to Act 3A, the Guarded Ruins. So there's basically, the difference is, Ichitaka is either leading the way or you fought with her. You've added a cultist token to the bag or a tablet token to the bag. You might have Alejandro on your side in play with you, and then you have a different Act 3A to progress to.
Yeah, and Alejandro is pretty useful, actually. I mean, he takes up an ally slot, but he gives you +1 skill value while investigating an ancient location. And if you're at an ancient location, you can exhaust him and draw 2 cards. So he's not actually, he's pretty good if you've got him, actually.
So if I look at the 2 different versions of Act 3A, just stepping back there to that. I know they have to get us to the ruins, so the story will progress. Yeah. But it just doesn't feel right the way she says, well, if you want to die, temple's just over there, off you go. Why? I'm not sure why she would send you to that, unless she's got, you've just beaten her at that point. Yeah. So it doesn't feel right that she would then send you to the temple anyway.
I know.
But, I know it's a contrivance to get us to the temple so that the story can progress, because that's where things move on. But
if it was like, you've sort of beaten her into submission and you kind of, she feels like she's got to tell you type of thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but you're right. It is a little bit like, you fools, you don't understand. It's that way.
Yeah, off you go.
Yeah, exactly. But it feels more like you've given her enough of a beating that she's kind of scared enough that she's going to tell you where you need to go, basically. Yeah.
But then, as we'll see, the way the 2 acts, the 2 Act 3s play out, it does become a lot more difficult for you if you took the fight option.
Yep.
So if we take one of these each, shall we? If you've taken the parley option, then you are on Search for the Ruins. If I cannot dissuade you, so be it. Follow me and I will lead you to the place you seek. But heed my warning. Disturb the ruins at your own risk. They have remained hidden for a reason. Alejandro warily keeps a safe distance from Ichitaka as she shows you the way. So now for the rest of the game, each Etzli Guardian enemy cannot attack or be attacked. And ignore the effects of each Arrows from the Trees treachery. So that's like a double bonus there.
Yeah.
You've now got a safe passage, basically, to the temple, apart from those extra encounter sets that we've just added to the deck.
Yeah.
But the Etzli Guardians we've come across so far are now uneasily on our side, shall we say, yes.
Yeah.
And are not going to overtly attack us.
Yeah.
And then the objective is 3 clues per investigator, but you have to be at the ruins of the Etzli to spend the clues as a group to advance.
Yeah. Yes. The other one is Ichitaka swiftly retreats and Alejandro places a hand on your shoulder. Thank you for taking my advice, he says, relieved. Now she's gone, I'll take point from now on. I know the river she speaks of. Come follow me. Each Esley Guardian enemy gets +1 fight and +1 evade. Each arrows from the tree's treachery gain surge. So that's worse. So you really are being harried by everybody in this circumstance.
Yeah. There's no middle ground for those guardians or the arrows from the trees. They either get better or they get worse.
Exactly. So you really are a brave set of investigators if you're going to take this option, really. And same thing if you're at the ruins, but this one you only need 2 clues per investigator to advance, so it's slightly easier from that perspective.
Presumably because your time will be spent fighting all the way there.
Yeah, and I think Alejandro's sort of leading the way. He kind of knows where, I don't know why he knows where to go, but yeah, it's slightly quicker, I suppose. I didn't notice that small difference, but yeah, you only need 2 per investigator in that case.
Yeah. So I guess we look at the ruin locations now.
Yep.
So the ruins of the Etzley is the one that we're aiming for, so we'll leave that one till last. First one I've got is Overgrown Ruins. It's 5 shroud, 1 clue per investigator. Forced, after you enter Overgrown Ruins, if you are poisoned, lose all remaining actions and end your turn. A dense thicket of flora obscures the route to these ruins. Tendrils of vine grip the pyramid steps as though holding on for dear life. So it's a really high shroud. 5 shroud for just 1 clue each. But it's a 2 victory point location, so it depends how much you want that XP. That sweet, sweet XP.
The other one is the Temple of the Fang. Great name, the Temple of the Fang. It's only 2 shroud and 1 clue per investigator, and it's also a victory too. Temple of the Fang gets +1 shroud for each vengeance point in the victory display. So this could either be a really easy couple of victory points or quite difficult, depending on... I think we had a lot of vengeance points in when we played because we got a lot of snakes. So rising just over the tree canopy is a time-worn step pyramid of pale stone. A storm of hisses surrounds you from the trees.
Ooh, how menacing.
Yeah. So there we go. That's the Temple of the Fang.
And then last of all is the Ruins of Etzley, which is where you seek 3 shroud, 2 clues per investigator. Forced, after you fail a skill test while investigating Ruins of Etzley, draw the top card of the encounter deck. Serpent statues carved from limestone surround the central temple, glaring at you ominously from afar. Victory 2.
And the thing about the Ruins of Etzley is you can only access it from Serpent's Haven or the circuitous route. So it's not like you...
That's right, yes.
That's the other thing. You might be exploring in the wrong place. So even if it's relatively high in the exploration deck, you know, you've got to be at the right place to access it as well. So yes, yeah, it's quite a difficult run to get to the Ruins of Etzley. We didn't manage it this time. We were close, but we didn't manage it when we played this scenario. So I think it's one of those scenarios where it doesn't matter how experienced you are, you're going to make this scenario sometimes and you're not going to make it other times, depending on, you know, a bit like the Midnight Masks. It really is kind of dependent on how things go. So I think I certainly went into this prepared that we weren't going to make it because it's quite common not to. So,
yes.
Yeah.
I guess as well, just looking back at Temple of Fang, one thing that should be the idea of it getting +1 shroud for each vengeance point in the victory display. We don't know what vengeance points means at this point, but in the resolution, we will find out that vengeance points means we have angered Yig. Yep. So the more we have angered Yig, the more difficult it is to investigate at the Temple of the Fang.
Yep.
So it's just a nice little little touch there. The way that how you play this story does affect the difficulty of certain tasks within that story.
Yeah. So just killing things for the sake of killing things is not always a good idea.
Makes you think twice now, doesn't it? Yes. Right. We've got this separate tracker now. Yes. What does that mean?
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so I just did the Ruins of Etzley, so do you want to do the agenda, perhaps? or one of the acts?
Okay, let's leave the acts to the end because that's the resolution. So if you don't do that, if you stumble around and you don't get to the ruins, which, like I said, happens quite a bit, you end up at Agenda 2B, which is endless meandering, which is right. that's a good summary of it. You find yourself in an endless loop traversing the same path through the jungle over and over again. No matter which direction you walk, the result is the same. It has been hours, perhaps even days. Meanwhile, you can hear the serpent creatures hissing in the trees, mocking you from afar. Out of food and exhausted from lack of sleep, you collapse against a half-rotted tree. Your vision becomes hazy. Each investigator is defeated. Each investigator who is not poisoned adds the set-aside poison weakness to his or her deck. There you go. You've not gotten there.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure about that flavour text, because it could just be that we were at the place we needed to be. We just ran out of time just to get those last clues. We aren't necessarily wandering lost, having no idea where we are. But I guess you can only have one.
Yeah, exactly.
Outcome there.
Oh, it's just that we just don't get. We don't get there. We get harassed so much that we just never kind of get there, kind of thing. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Yep.
Okay, so. Then over on the act side, the guarded ruins. So again, that is the parley with Ichtaka path. So we've got to the ruins of Etzley and we've spent our 2 clues per investigator. And I love it when they do this. They have a full art on the back of the act card. Discovery of a lifetime. What you have found is beyond your wildest expectations. Despite their supposed age, the ruins appear preserved in time. Several aspects of the architecture are strangely futuristic. You set out to investigate at once. Resolution 2.
Yeah, the other one is identical, except it's Resolution 1. Yeah. So those are your 3 resolutions, basically. There. It's 2, yeah, exactly.
Just look back at the campaign guide there. So, defeat then. We are Wednesday, July the 1st, 1925. So that is, 2 days?
Yeah.
3 days later?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's the last one was June 29th,
I think it was.
Yeah.
28th,
yeah.
okay.
So,
that was close. So 28, 29, 30, 3 days later. I still have no idea how we made it back to camp alive. The jungle was more perilous than we could have possibly imagined. This may read like the ravings of a lunatic, but I cannot explain it any other way. Being lost in the jungle was no picnic, but that was the least of our worries. The rainforest was guarded by unfathomable horrors, serpentine creatures driven by anger and hate, hunting us relentlessly. Perhaps just as deadly were the human natives of the rainforest. They appeared to be Aztec warriors as far as dress and speech were concerned. Despite the conquering of the Aztec people hundreds of years ago, these warriors somehow survived. How they managed to remain undiscovered this long is beyond us. I thought Alejandro would be excited to learn more about them, but he was more disturbed than fascinated. I suppose he has a right to be incredulous. Nothing about this expedition makes sense. The serpent creatures chased us for what seemed like days. There was only 3. Finally, we were able to find our way back to camp, but the price was steep. We had lost all progress we had made, and many of us were injured and afflicted by serpent venom. We have no choice but to send runners to the nearest city for additional supplies and wait to recover from our wounds. So in our log, we've recorded that we were forced to wait for additional supplies. If it ended while we were still on Act 1 or 2, we record that Ichtaka observed your progress with keen interest, because we haven't met her yet, so she's just watching us from afar. And we record that Alejandro followed the investigators into the ruins. Any one investigator may choose to add Alejandro to his or her deck. If we fought with Ichtaka, then she is wary of us, and Alejandro followed us into the ruins. If she's leading the way, we record that we earned her trust, but Alejandro chose to remain at camp. So it's all very binary, isn't it? We've either got Ichtaka or we've got Alejandro. That's the end result. It's like they will never be seen in the same place at the same time. And then for each vengeance point in the victory display, here is where it starts to explain what this is all about. Record 1 tally mark under Yig's Fury in your campaign log. Beware the anger of the father of serpents, as his fury will haunt you in the future. Anyway, moving on.
If you got resolution 1, which is you fought Ichitaka, got there. It's the July 2nd. Somehow, after much toil and many hours of exploration, we found the ruins that Alejandro sought, though we scarcely could have been ready for what we encountered in the wilds of the jungle. The rainforest was guarded by unfathomable horrors, serpentine creatures driven by anger and hate. They hunt us relentlessly, wielding primitive weaponry and communicating in sharp hisses. Perhaps just as deadly were the human natives of the rainforest. They appeared to be Aztec warriors as far as dress and speech were concerned. Despite the conquering of the Aztec people hundreds of years ago, those warriors somehow survived. How they managed to remain undiscovered is beyond us. The warrior named Ichitaka was particularly intriguing. We were able to defuse the initial encounter with her. This isn't the fight one. This is the
this is the parley one, isn't it? Yes.
This is our one, yeah. She helped guide us through the jungle, only to disappear mysteriously when we reached the ruins. I have a feeling we have not seen the last of her. Alejandro did not agree with our decision to trust the Etzli warriors. He's decided to stay at camp until further notice. Disturbed as he is by their presence, I thought that he would be excited to learn more about them, but I expect his discovery defies even his broad-minded theories. I suppose he has a right to be distrustful. Nothing about this expedition made sense. We have cleared a route to what Alejandro believes is the main temple of the ruins. There is little time to rest. The serpent creatures seem intent on stopping us, so we cannot tarry any longer than necessary. Soon we will enter the ruins to see what secrets they hide. So, in the campaign log, we've cleared a path to the ruins. Alejandro chose to remain in camp, so he's not coming along. We've earned Ichitaka's trust, and we do the Yig's Fury in victory.
Excellent. And then Resolution 2, which is the fighty one. Mm-hmm. Again, it's Thursday, July the 2nd. Somehow, after much toil and many hours of exploration, we found the ruins that Alejandro sought, though we scarcely could have been ready for what we encountered. So this is all the same as before. So then it just finishes off. We managed to fend off and interrogate their leader, a warrior named Ichitaka. Before she fled, she warned us not to go near the ruins. Unfortunately for her, we refused to go home empty-handed. With Alejandro leading the way, we've cleared a route to what he believes the main temple of the ruins. There is little time to rest. The serpent creatures seem intent on stopping us, so we cannot tarry any longer than necessary. Soon we will enter the ruins to see what secrets they hide. So the investigators cleared a path to the ruins. Alejandro followed us into the ruins, so one of us can add him to our deck. And Ichitaka is wary of the investigators. Yep. So then again, Yig's Fury and victory points.
Yes.
So there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, essentially it's sort of, like I said earlier, it's like a binary resolution, isn't it? Either we've got Alejandro on side and we're marching off into the ruins to loot and plunder or whatever, or Ichitaka is with us and Alejandro is going, I'm going with you, I'm staying back here.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to do what this was my expedition.
Not fair. I'm not going to play.
I'm taking my ball and then going home. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then we move on to an interlude. Is that a new thing? I can't remember. I should remember, shouldn't I?
I think we've had Costa. We had some interlude-y things as well. So we have had them before. Yeah.
I don't think they were quite as impactful as these interludes, though.
No, exactly.
And again, this also feels a little bit choose your own adventure, doesn't it? Because we've basically got 4 paragraphs to read here.
Yes.
They're basically different versions of them depending on what supplies we've got.
Yes.
Do you want to take the first one?
Yeah. So the first one is whether you get a restful sleep or you're tossing and turning. So if you've got the blanket, then you get a restful sleep, which is mercifully I was able to sleep through each night. However, while my body rested, my mind was plagued by nightmares. A cavern like a gaping maw, bathed in dim red light, the walls slithering with the glimmering scales of 100 vipers. It might have been better that I hadn't slept at all, and that's, you get suffer no ill effects. However, if you've got tossing and turning, this feels a bit edge of the earth too. There's a bit of, the feeling with that as well, isn't there? Those nights in the jungle, I barely slept. A strange fog rolled through the camp each night, plunging the air into an intense, peculiar cold. My bedroll offered some protection against the elements, but we hadn't been prepared for this unnatural weather. Flies and mosquitoes buzzed in my ears every time I began to drift off. Even when I finally slept, I would soon be startled awake by a crawling insect or lizard across my face. I wager I'll get very little sleep on this journey, and you suffer a mental or a physical trauma. Your choice. Oh, that's nice. You choose.
Next one is check your supplies. The investigators as a group must cross off one provision per investigator from their supplies. For each provision they cannot cross off, choose an investigator to read low on rations. So in one way that's quite nice, because you could have just one person, just I'll take all the rations for everybody.
Yep.
And then they just cross them off their supply.
Exactly.
Or you can all have one each, or whatever, however you choose to do it. But if there isn't enough to go round, whoever doesn't get any rations, low on rations, we thought we brought enough food and water for everyone, but the journey had taken its toll on our supplies. When the sun rose and it came time to eat, we discovered we were already running out of provisions. You begin the next scenario with 3 fewer resources.
Yes. Then the other thing is lead investigator must choose what investigator to be the group's lookout. Then that investigator checks his or her supplies. If he or she has binoculars, he or she reads shapes in the trees. Otherwise, he or she reads eyes in the dark. So shapes in the trees, most of the nights passed without incident, but on this night I was startled by the rustling of tree branches along the southern border of our camp's clearing. Despite the darkness, I was able to use my binoculars to see shapes moving in the trees. The shapes appeared human. But why? Why do they only watch us from afar? What is their purpose? You earn 2 additional experience as you gain further insight into the motivations of the Etzli. I'm not sure what you learned from that, but anyway. Eyes in the dark. Each night as I watched, I didn't just feel watched. I saw the eyes peering out from the inky darkness surrounded our camp. They knew we were there. The yellow eyes watched me, alert, my weapons drawn, ready to defend the camp if need arose. Our eyes met, and a darkness seized my heart. You suffer a mental trauma. Ooh, doling out the trauma.
Yeah. And then lastly, check your supplies. Each investigator with medicine may cross it off from their supplies to choose and remove a poisoned weakness from any investigator's deck. Each investigator who still has a poisoned weakness in his or her deck reads the poison spreads. And so that says, as the days went by, the poison continued to spread through my body. By the second night, my skin was drenched in sweat. I started having difficulty breathing, and I began every morning by retching up most of the previous night's dinner. You suffer 1 physical trauma. So yeah, chances are at least one of those will have affected you, because you won't have had everything. So you're probably coming out of this first scenario with 1 or 2 extra trauma on top of any trauma you might have received from being defeated.
Yes.
So yes, it's quite a tough start, isn't it?
It is. It's not messing around. If you're under any illusion before that this was going to be a difficult expedition, you certainly know that by the end of this scenario. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so there we are. So, what do you reckon, Kevling?
Yes, it's some of the bit, like we've touched on, some of the bits of the way the narrative seems to fold out feel a little bit clunky and contrived, trying to make the story fit what needs to happen next.
Yep.
But overall, I really like the way it plays out. It's already pitching the idea of Ichitaka against Alejandro.
Yep.
You're either siding with one or the other. There is no middle ground. And then the whole idea of having these limited supplies that will have an impact on your progress as well.
Yes.
I like all of the mechanics. I don't like how harsh it is.
Yeah. Yep.
So, for example, not being able to have a decent night's sleep, I'm not sure why that would give you trauma. Maybe it should make your first couple of investigations slightly more difficult because you're a bit foggy-headed, perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't know. it feels a little bit harsh, but I guess anything else, you'd be creating a whole extra layer of admin to try and track how it affects you. Whereas it is a nice, simple one off you start. Tough. Yeah.
Yes.
But yes, it's. I love the whole idea of being lost in the jungle, exploring, trying to find your way to the location you're trying to search for, with everything against you the whole way. It's really good stuff. It's just, like I say, a little harsh. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's I think in terms of bringing to life the difficulty of fighting through the jungle, I think it does a really good job of that. And it sets it up narratively great because it all seems everything's going to be all so joyous at the start, and everything just, goes downhill from there. You've got the jungle itself, you've got the serpents, you've got the Etzli, it's very, very hostile environment that you're negotiating. Very challenging. And like you say, it's not like the Midnight Masks where everything's laid out and you can just run around to the different locations. You're literally kind of feeling your way through. It does a really good job of bringing that to life. I think for me, so I really like it. I think it's very atmospheric. I think it doesn't require a huge cognitive load to get what's happening in the story because the mechanics play so well into what's going on. I think two things, though. I think it's so hostile, but the number of victory points you can expect to walk away with is relatively few.
Yes.
It's very, very stingy on victory points.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 8 in total on locations.
Yeah, but the chances
some of those have got really high shrouds.
You're going to be like 2 or 3. Probably Ichitaka and maybe 1 or 2 others, right? So you're going to walk away with 2 or 3 XP. So you're not going to be able to do very much. And you're going to have all this trauma, so you're going to be like, "Oh, quick! I need the hallowed mirror," and you're going to be doing those sorts of things. Or you're going to be getting allies on board, so you can soak stuff up. I think the interludes are very harsh. I think they're a bit too harsh, to be honest. They just feel again atmospheric wise, but like you say, you're like just doling out those traumas in the interlude. When you've just gone through a really hard scenario.
Maybe like instead of the trauma, it was you start the next scenario with 1 mental damage or 1 physical damage. So at least then you've recovered it by the time that scenario ends, perhaps. But
yes, exactly.
The level of trauma is unprecedented in this campaign.
It is, and I mean, not doesn't happen again. So. What I mean is,
in
other campaigns, you just don't experience that level of trauma. Now, once you know the game, this campaign, you can mitigate against it, right? But particularly for that first one, it's particularly harsh, and I just think the interlude was just a little bit on the harsh side, because you could start with a trauma from failing the scenario. That's not unheard of. And then you're going to you could end up with 2 or 3 trauma before you even get to the second scenario, which could be, it just makes it very, which again, from a story perspective, you would be feeling very disconcerted and demotivated. But
unless you're playing Calvin, and in which case it is an absolute bonus because you're starting each subsequent scenario with improved stats.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, apart from that, I think it's great. I think it's a great scenario, and challenging. It's certainly not a scenario for people who are relatively new to the game. I think it's probably a scenario that is more for a more experienced player, for sure. Yeah.
So next time, should I say, we'll be venturing into the temple itself, into the ruins.
Yeah.
and find out what happened to the Etzli.
Yeah, what could go wrong? Exactly. So I'm very much looking forward to, well, I guess we've got a bit of a Christmas break, of course. And I should just say, Merry Christmas to all our listeners. And thank you so much for listening this year. It's been really fantastic. Yeah. So, yes, Merry Christmas, everybody. And
yes. And enjoy the break if you don't celebrate.
Yeah. And we will see you on the other side, 2023.
As we venture deeper into the jungle.
Exactly. I think that's it now. So thanks very much for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm CrabbyTerror8. I'll see you next time.
And I'm Kevling. Bye.
Bye.
So as usual, thank you for listening. We're on all the major podcast platforms, so please subscribe on your podcast service of choice. And if you have any feedback, you can email us on ftextpodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter @TextFlavor. So on behalf of Crabby Terror and myself, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.